Welcome to the TLC Unleashed show, Hollywood Vibes, Sports and Life with your host, Traci Lynn. This show is brought to you by Quest Nutrition. Cheat clean and make healthy eating fun with Quest Nutrition products. Buzz Pop cocktails are the indulgent cocktail with a healthy twist. Good evening. Welcome to the show this evening, the TLC Unleashed show, Hollywood Vibes, Sports and Life with your host, Traci Lynn. We are live in the studio. We had a few adventures getting here, and as you guys can see from Facebook, not only is he a mastermind of a man, Dino, he is very resourceful as well. I would like to welcome to the show my friend and amazing man, Dino Zagrafis.
Zagrafis. Hey, Tracy, how are you?
Thanks
for having me on.
Oh, well, this has been years in the making. I've wanted to have you on the show for a very long time. We also have a special guest as well. We have an ex-Navy SEAL, Joe, will be calling into the show. Also, specialist, Dr. Bart Billings, amazing man. And we are sponsored by Quest Nutrition and Buzz Pop Cocktails. So we are going to be actually sampling the Buzz Pop. I think we kind of just, maybe after the excursion we just went through, you might want to sample this now. So
I would love to after what we've been through.
Buzz Pop cocktails. These are amazing. They're basically, we have them at all these events, special red carpets. And so you just want to try that. It's infused with vodka, fresh fruit, gluten-free. It's also made with delicious pure vodka. Dino's favorite.
Ooh, Moscow Mule.
Yeah.
Nice.
Hold
Very
that
good.
baby up. What do you think? It's a sipping cocktail right now. As you can tell, in California, it's about 87 degrees out today. And
Hottest Thanksgiving ever.
yes. You like it?
It's great. It's really, really good.
Yeah, these are amazing. So we're hoping to actually maybe bring them on to Dino's special event that he has coming up on the 6th or 7th.
Yes, it's December 6th. It's my annual Christmas dinner that I have.
Yep.
Special Operations Christmas dinner. And it's always a fundraiser. I try to make it a fundraiser. And this year it's going to be a fundraiser for 3 officers that have come into dire need last year.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate thing, but
I love that you give back and always, giving back to the community. And I'm not sure if our other guests are joined in, but if they are, I'd like to welcome you to the show. And if not, so we just want to introduce Dino to the show. And Dino, tell us what your titles are. I mean, you have an incredible job. Talk about never a dull moment or a boring job.
Yeah, well, I'm the senior officer or the second senior officer in the San Francisco Police Department Bomb Squad or in the police department in general. The senior officer for special operations and the bomb squad commander right now. So
a boring job.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never a dull moment in my life. So.
Oh my gosh. And how long have you been doing this for, Dino?
36 years now. 35 have been in special operations out of my 36, yes.
Wow. And that's a type of job where do you decide all of a sudden, this is what I'm going to do for a living? Because, that's not just something you jump into. Hey, we do half a year of schooling and now we're in charge of the bomb squad. Yeah,
well, the police department was something I came into. I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie. Growing up, I used to race cars, motorcycles, professionally drag race. And I always wanted a job that would kind of keep it going, keep the thrill on. It's that adrenaline junkie thing. And so I became a police officer. And then from there, I had to take it to the next step. And special operations was that step. And that's where I've been ever since.
Amazing, amazing. I feel always so well protected when I'm with Dino, especially when we can be resourceful and use can openers to, make sure we get through windows so that we can get here. So it was actually quite a bit of a challenge, but we did it.
Hey, we made it. The show must go on.
Thanks to the guys in Manhattan Beach for lending us the can opener from the restaurant there to get the window open. So never a dull moment. I'd like to welcome, I have a guest. Who do we have on? Welcome.
Hello.
Hi, is this Joe?
Yes, it is.
How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing good. How are you, Tracy?
Good. Welcome to the show. So I'd like to introduce my next guest to the show tonight. We have an ex-Navy SEAL. His name is Joe. We're keeping his name anonymous, so we're going to call him Joe for the evening. And Joe, let's talk about a little bit about your background and how long you were a Navy SEAL for.
I was in the Navy SEAL teams for about 7 years.
Mm-hmm. And you've been out for a little bit of time now?
Yeah, I've been out a little bit over 10 years.
Okay. And I would like to kind of segue into what my next guest and who he'll be is Dr. Bart Billings. He's actually the author, and he's an ex-Army colonel. He was the author of Invisible Scars, which is a phenomenal book. If you can pick it up on Amazon, you can read it. It's talking about post-traumatic stress. We don't call it post-traumatic stress disorder with Dr. Bart Billings when he's here because it's not about being a disorder. It's about actually being a symptom. So we'll get deeper into that once we get Bart Billings on the line. And so, Joe, let's talk a little bit about your career. And I mean, that's a long time that you're in the service for, and you're transitioning still back into civilization, into normal land, as we like to say it, for the last 10 years now. How's that been going for you?
It's been a little rough. You first get out, and I was forced out because of injuries occurred. I was an athlete when I was younger, and then kind of like Dino was saying, I was an adrenaline junkie, always sports and fast things. So,
Yeah.
I wanted to try my hand at being one of the world's best, and went into the SEAL teams. So for me, it was the end of my career was forced because of some injuries, and I got out feeling pretty good and pretty confident about myself. I was educated and started moving through life. And, 3-4 years down the road is when I started to have, some of the problems that I'm dealing with physically and mentally. Felt like a tough guy and, had the ego and all that going. And then all of a sudden, some of those other things set in and, you're not quite sure to ask for help and who to turn to. And your ego's telling you that you can still push through it and figure out, a way to get past. And, finally it gets bad enough, where either something bad's going to happen or you're going to ask for help. And so that's kind of where I'm at in my life now.
Wow. Well, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, also being a friend of yours and knowing your story and seeing your story and seeing you during that time, throughout this time and through, the last 10 years as well, what life has been like for you. So we wanted to be candid and open so that we can educate and provide knowledge for the world so that we can, really just show what it's like to be, somebody battling for this country and what you've been through. So, and we want to talk about the side effects and the symptoms and the post-traumatic stuff that you've been dealing with over the years. So we're going to dive into it. We're trying to connect with Dr. Bart Billings on the phone. I'd like to go back to Dino and just follow up a little bit on his career and what it's been like. I mean, the biggest question I have for you, and I never asked you in the full time that I've known you, it's been, a few years?
Quite a few years.
Maybe like 24, 25, 26, something like that. And being only 30, I mean, wow, we've known each other since I was like 4.
Good one. I like it.
Right?
I like it. Make me feel good.
So, what has been the craziest experience on the job for you where it's just like, one of those experiences where you go, I didn't think I was going to come out of this alive?
There's been plenty. People, you go out and you meet people and you have relationships. And it's one of the questions that is quite frequently asked a lot. And it's because people are intrigued by what you do. Mm-hmm. I always try to dig in and find one. And my colleagues probably could vouch for the same thing. I try to stay away from them. I mean, I will find one for you and I will tell you one. Mm-hmm. But you try to stay away from them because I think that you don't like to share those things. You want to share happiness with people. You want to share funny things. I mean, you know me. We go way back and we're always laughing. We can't stop laughing.
Yeah.
And I think it's because in our careers, we see so many terrible, terrible things that we typically don't like to share them.
Yeah.
And it's hard to pull out that one because you try to take them and put them away. They go away in your memory. You don't want them to be there. And you don't want the public to really know what goes on there. Of course, they're exposed through the news channels and whatever the media puts out there. There are a ton. I try to find the fun ones. One of the craziest ones that just comes off the top of my head is when I first became a bomb technician, and I went on one of my first runs. And the way the story goes is police officers, patrol officers go to the runs first that are dispatched. And they ended up going to a dead body call. It was in a hotel, and the hotel people know you get that smell of a dead body.
Okay.
And so the officers were there, and sure enough, it was dead body. They found him in the room. But when they opened his door with a pass key, he was laying there. He was a hoarder. And all the material in the house went literally from floor to roof, just a little bit of room to crawl around on the top. And he had died feet first at the doorway, whether he knew he was going to die, like he felt something medical, whatever. We couldn't ever determine it. And he ended up dying there. So when the officers opened the door, there he was, laying almost straight up in a straight up position.
Wow.
But next to him was a book called The Anarchist Cookbook. It's a famous book for people that like to dabble in things they shouldn't be dabbling in, explosives and things like that. And they found it, and they figured, oh, this guy might be making explosive items or whatever. And they were too scared to go inside. First of all, it was hard to get through the place, but they were too scared, so they called us in the bomb squad. Well, me being the young guy and the newest guy, so I get the job. So I had to go past him, and he was decayed like crazy and whatnot, and crawl up through whatever I can crawl through to make sure that there was no explosive devices in the place. When I left, I came out and I told my boss and everybody that was outside the building, because it was all evacuated, everything is good. I didn't find anything. And my boss looked at me with a little shy smile and said, "Did you check him out to make sure he wasn't booby-trapped?" And I said, "No, I didn't." So he goes, "Well, you better go in there and do it. How are you going to do it?" I said, "I know how I'm going to do it." So I asked the fire department for a long rope. I went back upstairs and I tied a noose around this guy's ankles, and I went a floor down and I yanked him. And I thought the whole body was going to come out. Well, when I felt the tugging go away and I had to go up and validate what I had just done, I didn't realize, but I pulled him apart. And it was one of the most horrendous things you ever had to see in your life. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for us, that's like movies.
It's like movies. Yeah.
Hollywood, movies like horror films and action and suspense and thrillers and dramas. For you, this is real life. This is day to day.
It's everyday stuff. Yeah.
How do you deal with the stress of this? Because, I mean, this is not normal to see stuff like this. How do you cope with the stress? Do you know?
It isn't normal. And what you try to do is you put it away. In a weird way, you try to normalize it, even though it's nowhere near normal. But I try to find the humor in it every day. I teach at the academy now. I teach special things for the officers when they're about to go out on the street. And when I close out with them, one of the things I tell them to do is the job itself will always give you things that you're not ready for, and terrible things. Again, as I started off the segment, that you will see, you have no control over that. It's going to be handed to you. It's just a part of the job that you sign off for. But at the end of the day, if you could find something humorous, it might seem like something very minuscule to you at the time. Something like you ever have somebody tell you a story at the bar and you're looking at him like, I don't find no humor in that, but he or she are laughing like it's
that's his all and be all. Yeah,
that's
and
correct.
He's giving that to everyone.
That's right. But if they could just channel that stuff and make it funny in one way or another, it kind of helps out. It kind of really, really helps out. Talking about it, people will say talking about it is a great thing. You can only talk about it if you talk about it to somebody who understands what it is that you're going through. So, and that's usually fellow officers. This is the infamous get off work, go decompress somewhere, have an adult beverage, and talk about what you went through for the day. But not something you want to go home and share really on a normal basis. Not normal.
Absolutely. Well, I would like to thank you for sharing that with, and it's interesting because I've been friends with you for so long, but again, I see the fun side and the lively side and the energetic and the passionate side of you, and I never want to pull that in. So this has been the first time that I've ever actually been, in a position where I'm able to ask you questions like this candidly, because I love the fun Dino, and I'm the same way too. Life's always serious. working hard, hustling to get to where I need to be in my business and life and, being a mom and stuff like that. So this is, a very interesting time for us because in our friendship and so we can actually talk about stuff like this because this is to educate people and let you guys know that, we deal with stress in certain ways, and we're going to talk about this and go dive into it further today with Dr. Billings on the phone. I would like to welcome him to the show. Welcome to the show, Dr. Bart Billings.
Thank you very much.
So glad you could be here today. I would like to introduce you to Dino Zagrafis.
Hello, Doctor.
How you doing?
Great, thank you.
Bomb Squad Commander and Special Forces. We also have on the phone ex-Navy SEAL Joe. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Bart Billings.
Hello.
Hello, Doctor.
What an incredible opportunity to bring these three amazing men together. The experienced Dr. Bart Billings is also an ex-Army colonel. He's also a psychologist. He's written the book and author of The Invisible Scars. And I know he speaks worldwide. I've seen him speak on a few occasions. And the knowledge that you have, Dr. Billings, is just phenomenal. So thank you for sharing it with our audience tonight.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed listening to what you were just talking about.
Thank you. Well, we're talking about the day-to-day, what seems, maybe normal to Joe and maybe normal to Dino, but not normal to the rest of the world because we've never experienced things like this. And what I really, really like and appreciate about you, Dr. Billings, is that you speak about post-traumatic stress disorders we've known in society, PTSD. I like how you call it PTS, or post-traumatic stress, because it is not a disorder. I'd like you to share with us what that means to you and why you labeled it the post-traumatic stress rather than a disorder.
Well, what you have to realize is that, and the two gentlemen on the phone realize this, whenever you're in a situation that's not a normal situation, you will have normal reactions, which to people looking at you don't understand that these are normal reactions, whether it's, anxiety, hypervigilance, nightmares, etc. These are normal reactions of being in an abnormal environment. So whether you're a police officer, fireman in combat, or just somebody who's in a car accident, had some emergency surgery, that's not a normal situation, and you're going to have a normal reaction to that abnormal situation. In combat, I say, and I put 34 years in the military, and I've seen just about every aspect. What you have is 99% of people go to combat have a normal reaction to a very abnormal environment. Even the basic training itself is not normal for people. They don't go through the kind of training even before combat. And that's why you see things like, Full Metal Jacket, the movie, it showed the guy committing suicide. Well, he was having post-traumatic stress reaction to being in that basic training environment. And people, if you don't recognize it and don't know how to deal with it, then it can get worse. That's when usually it interferes with your life and it becomes, quote unquote, a disorder. And hopefully, you can deal with it before then. People need to be aware of it. And one of the things I remind people, you don't want to label people with a psychiatric label, that there's something wrong with them. In World War II, people had battle fatigue. They didn't call it battle fatigue disorder. Battle fatigue was a normal reaction. They got tired of fighting, and you give them enough time, and they figure out how to get back to normal. In World War II, they had a lot more time between combat and when they came back to be a civilian. Now, the luxury of the time is not there, so it's much more difficult. But yeah, it's a normal reaction. And one of the bad things that's happening is when people are having a normal reaction to an abnormal environment, getting back to their normal life, doing things, and I call it integrative treatment, integrative wellness. As you described before, finding that body, and that's not a normal situation. You have might have some nightmares from it, but you're using humor. I use humor when I do therapy with people. That's when you're laughing, you can't be sad at the same time.
Yep.
It's called reciprocal inhibition, for a fancy word for it, but that's what it's called. You can't have two emotions going at the same time. So it's good to find the lighter moments, that the two good things as a result of a bad thing, the maybe exercise, the yoga, the imagery. I mean, there's a whole bunch, dozens of integrative treatment things that you can do. Like I said, from Pilates to yoga to guided imagery to peer groups, etc. So, post-traumatic stress is a normal reaction. The problem is they are drugging these people with brain-altering psychiatric medications. That is disastrous because these medications all have black box warnings: antidepressants, antipsychotics, anti-anxieties. And the first side effect in a black box means this is the worst drug you can possibly take for a reaction. It can kill you. The first adverse reaction is suicidality. Well, stop and think about 22 veteran suicides a day.
Wow.
That's kind of unusual. Well, but what do you think? Do you think there's a relationship? Absolutely. All of the mass shooters, they were all on psychiatric meds. Did you know that? Not many people knew that because it's well hidden. These two latest shootings, the one in Las Vegas, the one in Texas, both those people were on psychiatric meds, either prior or during the event. So in my book, Invisible Scars, I list the names of the mass shooters, many of them, and I list the psychiatric meds, the brain-altering meds they were on, and where the shootings took place. So when I see PTSD, if somebody comes to me, a patient, and they've already been labeled PTSD, I don't see the D as a disorder anymore. I see it as post-traumatic stress drugged. They're drugged.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to bring Joe into this piece of conversation right now because Joe's experience being on the prescription medications, and let's talk about how you were first prescribed these medications, Joe, when you came out of the SEAL team, and what they were, if you care to talk about that, and
Sure.
Kind of what happened for you from there on.
So initially, probably the first 3-4 years, I started to have some anxiety and just some extra energy that would be built up through the day. And I would find that it would distract me or I'd just get really amped up. So initially I was given clonazepam, and then I was given trazodone for sleep. And in my dreams, I was dreaming of combat every night. And this will sound strange, but they weren't nightmares. It was always me fighting. And it was either in a fist fight, a knife fight, or a gun fight. And then, so I really was never getting quality sleep. So when I would take the trazodone, it literally would kind of drug me, through the night, and kind of wake over with that hangover feeling in the morning, because it actually has an asthmatic in it. So you kind of, if you take a bunch of Benadryl, you kind of get that feeling in the morning. So that went on for, several years. And then I've also had a bunch of orthopedic issues. So then I was put on 2 different types of pain medication, along with clonazepam and also trazodone, which the doctor can tell you is a no-no, and most people die from that combination of a cocktail. I was on that medication for about 7 years. About a year ago, I decided to go completely clean and come off that medication. And then what happened was had a really big anxiety disorder. But the problem is I've been, diagnosed and misdiagnosed probably about 6 or 7 times, like the doctor's talking about labeling. I've had PTSD listed, I've had depression, I've had schizophrenia, and every time one of these happened, I was given a new medication, whether it was an SSRI, lithium, something to drug me. And all this time I'm still taking pain medication. I'm still, so there's this huge cocktail of what's going on. And when, I finally decided to get clean and got a doctor, we're like, hey, we need to just see, what you're like on a daily basis without taking any drugs and what's going on. And, I'm still going through this right now. I'm basically clean off of all of that stuff, and I'm having nightmares, and I have what they call a tension headache every day, which they think it's from depression. It can be from sleep anxiety, but it feels like a halo around my head, and it's the worst in the morning. It's super intense and like a migraine, and I'm thinking all negative thoughts, thinking combat thoughts, thinking.
Hello?
Kind of as I get up and go through the day, it's better. But it's always present. It's just lighter. And the first thing the VA wants to do is, give you more drugs.
Right.
Could I interject something?
Yeah, please do.
Get my book and read it, please. Get the book, Invisible Scars. There's solutions to your problem. One of the top people in the country, I run the big International Combat Stress Conference, actually for 24 years. Stanley Krippner is an expert on nightmares. 2 sessions and your nightmares are gone. It's incredible with the integrative treatments, all the different kind of treatments that deal with this. But you're very fortunate. One of the things I discovered when I did research for the book, there's a neurologist here in San Diego, Fred Bauman. He's a top neurologist, and I had him look into dead in beds. He identified, and this was years ago, over 400 military people on multiple psychiatric meds like you were on, who went to sleep and never woke up, died in their sleep. Their heart just stopped.
Yeah.
You're very, very lucky. You're very lucky. Something bad didn't happen to you. That's a perfect storm for either dead in bed or suicide or homicide, that you were on those drugs.
Yeah.
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 Doctor, this is Dino, and I want to ask you a question because it's kind of a topic that's coming now in the police department. It's really starting to show its face value. Now, we know about it with the military, but it's been talked about a lot about the police department personnel and emergency services personnel, fire, ambulance. It seems like it's something that nobody wants to touch because of the potential monetary value that would incur to cities and counties and government agencies to deal with this problem. And do you see a direct correlation with emergency services personnel also, as well as military?
Okay. I'm glad you asked that. I just worked with a fireman. And it's kind of ironic. He was in charge of the brigade or a whole area of firemen, and he was in a fire, and electric wire came across his head and resulted in some brain damage. What happened to him afterwards is, again, traditionally, he went back to work, but he was on all different kind of medications. Fate was in store for him to change his life. He came to the library. My wife volunteers at the police station. She does fingerprinting. His wife works there. And when I wrote the book, Invisible Scars, my wife was talking to his wife and said, "Oh, your husband's having problems. Have him come to the book signing at the library." And I did an hour talk, and I signed some books. And afterwards, he came up to me and he said, "I felt like you were talking to me." And I said, "Oh, really?" And I said, "That's great. It's always great when you feel like I've been talking to you." Right. And he said, "I'm going to get your book." 3 weeks later, he contacted me, and he said, "I was ready to commit suicide. I just want to tell you your book saved my life."
Wow.
And if you go on the book website, which is BartP.com, and I'm not trying to sell books. I'm trying to save lives.
I understand.
Because all the money that the book generates actually goes to a scholarship fund for kids that are in college that lost a parent in combat. So the book has been saving lives. It saved his life. If you go to the book website and click on Buy Book, read the reviews of the book. His is one of the first reviews that says, "This book saved my life." Now, recently, and it works for firemen, it works for police officers, it works for anybody, the book. What the Marines are doing, here's another example that you can take this to the bank. I had a call from the Marine Corps League. Right now he's the chief of staff. And he called me out of the blue. I didn't know him from anybody. And he said, I just read the first 25 pages in your book. I said, well, that's nice. I'm happy you called me and told me you read it. And I'm thinking, oh, God, he only read 25 pages. I got no criticism. It's all 5 stars. This is the first one. Because he didn't read any more than 25 pages. He said, I read 25 pages, and next to the Bible, it's the best book I will ever read. What he did with the book, and this is growing by leaps and bounds, he decided to do an Invisible Scars peer group book club. He started off with 22 people. Every week they discuss a chapter in the book. Now, they're required to be part of the group. They read one chapter every 2 weeks. But for those 2 weeks, they discuss that chapter in depth, and then they move on. I got an email from him about a week ago with a picture of all of the guys, and they're holding a flag, and it said, this book has saved 2 lives in this group. And we are all signing the flag and sending it to you. Now, they keep ordering, and I make sure they get it for cost from the publisher. Hundreds of books are going, and the Marines are doing peer, in the Visible Scars, peer group book clubs. And the reason it's so effective, they have a guide. They have a guide. Most groups, most people who do groups in the middle, they don't know where they're going with that group. They have a guide. They know exactly where they're going. I got a call one day from them, and he said, you scared the hell out of my Marines. I said, well, how'd I do that? I wasn't even there. Well, we were on chapter 4, and you talk about dead in bed, and that scared the hell out of some of my Marines because some of them are on multiple meds. So, yes, it works for firemen. It works, like I said, the Combat Stress Conference, we've had SWAT people there. We've had FBI people, and we discussed these same problems.
Well, I'd like to ask you, Dr. Bart-Billies, and thank you so much. And again, I haven't read the book myself, but I am definitely going to be getting a copy, and I look forward to both Dino and Joe reading it as well, and the rest of the world. I'd like to know what you think would be the top things that we could utilize that you can extract from the book that would be the top things in order to change these lives and help them through these tough times right now.
Okay. I know a Navy SEAL by the name of Miguel Vega. Either one of you guys know Miguel?
I do not. No.
Okay, he's up in L.A. He started a program for veterans. When he came back from combat, he said, I almost got killed several different ways in combat. He said, but nothing approached killing me like the drugs that the VA gave me. And he said, I realized I was dying. They were killing me, and I had to stop. And he did stop, and he got on a program, and an integrative treatment program. He put it together for veterans in Los Angeles. Google Miguel Vega. He's a retired Navy SEAL. One of the neatest guys you're going to ever run into. What you can get out of the book, I already told you one thing. Post-traumatic stress is a normal reaction to being in an abnormal environment. There's a bill hopefully going through John McCain's office, which is going to say a veteran will have the right to be told what alternatives there are to psychiatric medication. That will be law before too long. The other thing, and so the first thing you got to say is, hey, I don't want drugs. I don't want brain-altering medications. Tell me what the integrated treatment programs are in the community here, in your programs. I want to be involved in an integrative treatment program, an integrative wellness program. That's the first thing. All vets should know they have a right to ask for that. Whether it's the VA, whether it's in the military, they have a right to ask for integrative treatment instead of drugging. Number 2, if you have a head injury, and this is critical, if you have a head injury from combat or head injury in general, your potential to commit suicide just from the head injury is 4 times more than the general population.
Wow.
4 times more. Just from the head injury. I've had people who had head injuries, they say, I'm just sitting there watching television, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, I should just kill myself. And it's like, where did that thought come from? No drugs, nothing. Now, and if you have a head injury, there's accompanying things that come along with a head injury. There's frustration because you're forgetting things. There's depression. And depression's a normal reaction too to life situations. It's kind of a Band-Aid until you get stronger and move forward. It relieves pain, actually, depression. But you can't be depressed too long. It's kind of like when I worked at the medical school in physical medicine rehab. If I go into a room and there's a newly injured paraplegic in the room, they're depressed. Well, of course they're depressed because the pain of realizing you're not going to walk again is so overwhelming, the depression dulls that pain. Right. So when people say, oh, go see this patient, he's depressed. Well, tell me, that's normal. He better be depressed or he didn't lose anything.
Yeah.
So now you have a head injury, and you don't have, if you're anxious, if you're frustrated, you don't have a psychiatric problem. You have a residual effect of a head injury. And that's normal, and everybody needs to know it, and here's how to deal with this, and I expect this to happen to you, and you can keep notebooks, you can do this if you're forgetting, keep a log. But the worst thing that happens is they are seen as having a psychiatric problem. So who do they get referred to? A psychiatrist or a psychologist who supports brain-altering psychiatric meds. Now you have somebody who has 4 times potential to commit suicide, and I'm going to give you a drug that the first side effect is suicidality.
Wow.
You multiply that 4 exponentially by what? 4, 8, 12, 16?
Right.
And I say, I was on a talk sports show with Hacksaw Reynolds here in San Diego, Hacksaw Hamilton in San Diego, and after Junior Seau committed suicide, he said, Doc, why do you think he committed suicide, ASCTE? He said, so how do you know that? You didn't do an autopsy. They didn't. You can't say that. I said, 100% of people in the National Football League, and I work with players, have CTE. 100%. It's a normal reaction to being in that kind of environment. It's part of the sport, CTE, and depending on what position you play, that's the degree of which you have CTE. So if you're a center or a linebacker, you're going to have it worse than people who are a place kicker. But that is a normal situation in the football league, in combat. So don't let anybody, and I told Hacksaw that. I said, Junior has CTE, and he said, well, you can't say that. They didn't do the autopsy. A year later, Hacksaw asked me back on the show, well, you're right, he has CTE. I said, Hacksaw, they all do. And now Boston University, Boston's brain bank, they did autopsies on 100 NFL players' brains, and they came up with 99% with CTE. I mean, that's 100%. They probably blew the one that they couldn't find it. But so now, what was Junior on? Junior was on medications that side effects was suicide.
Yeah. And we've seen that.
Doctor,
Sorry, go ahead.
I can't hear you.
When I came out of this, I had depression. So they told me that my serotonin was low. So for the last year, I've taken 8 different SSRIs. And within 4 days of taking each one of those, I went suicidal with each one of those. And not actually where I was thinking it, but it was that subconscious thought of just like, okay, we can't live like this. We need to move on. And it was a thing where I would just literally have to call my family and take me back to the ER to go to the emergency room. And every time I'm telling them I have these side effects, this SSRI, you keep telling me that it's low serotonin, and it's not helping me. It's creating the opposite effect. And I mean, you can't believe I've been to 3 psychiatrists there, and all of them just want to keep feeding me the same thing when I'm telling them that's what's going on. So that's where some of the hopelessness starts to come in, because you're having these dreams and
Hello?
these head not quite sure return.
Well, that all you have to do, any of those medications they're giving you, Google them, put down black box side effects, and you'll see all of those problems.
So how do we combat this? I mean, we've seen this too, Dr. Bart Billings, as you spoke about the NFL. I worked closely with the NFL alumni, and and some people there that had suffered from CTE, and we'd seen it with obviously Juno Seau. And so now let's put this case scenario. We've put them on these psychiatric drugs, so changing and altering their states. And then all of a sudden these guys go off of these drugs. How do we help them and manage that? And especially asking from a family standpoint, because, there's wives out there, there's children out there that are trying to help and deal with their family at this time. And where do we come or do they come into play to help these people as well, to support them, to get them back to, this safe place of mental health?
Okay, first off, you have to find a good detoxification program to detox off these medications.
Okay.
It has to be medically monitored. You're going to be getting different kind of supplements while you're going through it. You're going to be, I know a flight surgeon who sets these things up, these detox centers, Air Force flight surgeon, and you get all kind of niacin, and you get into steam baths and saunas, and you just kind of bleed the stuff out, bleed all these chemicals out of your system. But it takes weeks to go through this. But on the other end, while you're going through this, there needs to be integrative treatment. There needs to be counseling. There needs to be peer group. There needs to be vocational counseling. There needs to be yoga, guided imagery, whatever you need. If you need nutrition, nutritional counseling, involvement with other people. But the critical thing is a formal detox program. In my book, I talk about an airman who came out of the Air Force, and there was nothing wrong with him. He didn't have any psychiatric problems, but he went to the VA, and he was told that he had post-traumatic stress disorder because he had some GI problems. He just had GI problems because he had vibroacoustic syndrome, which results if you're in a high-intensity, low-frequency vibratory environment for significant periods of time. You get GI problems, cardiovascular thickening, lesions. He had a lesion, and he had some GI problems. Got misdiagnosed. They put him on so many different meds over a 15-year period. 8 of those years he was in a wheelchair. He couldn't even walk because of the meds, and nobody did anything about it. Finally, somebody said to him, "You got to get off these meds." And he went to a private in Arizona detox program, went in a wheelchair. 19 days later, he walked out. He had a little Parkinsonian tremor when I evaluated him in his right arm, and that went away too. But he got back to living. He got back to, being involved with the community, being involved in a wellness program, being involved with other people. But it's very hard to make sense out of life if your brain is messed up with brain-altering psychiatric meds.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I have a question on behalf of Dino, and Dino doesn't know that I'm going to ask this, but just thinking, been a friend of Dino's for a very long time, and, he's very close to my heart, and I consider him family. So what happened? How do we help, somebody in this high-profile stress position where, he's not been diagnosed with anything, he has, no signs of post-traumatic stress. Clearly, he's been in post-traumatic stress situations. So what happens to someone like this, and how can we, assist him in the future so when he does retire, we can help this so that it doesn't happen to him? Does that make sense?
Well, it has to happen constantly, every day. You have to be involved with family. You have to be involved with other activities, whether it's church, whether it's a wellness center where you go. Like I go to a wellness center every morning. We have the gym rats there. There's 30 of us. We talk to each other. We socialize together. We take care of each other. That's a very supportive environment. Socializing, being in a social environment away from your work is important, where you're talking about other things and doing other things. I did things like I used to shoot competitive archery. The people that competed with me, they were every aspect of life you can imagine. but it was a way of totally. I mean, when you're shooting competitive archery, your mind is nowhere except where the target is.
Right.
You can't think about other things. They've done research with comedies. You watch funny movies. Don't watch cop movies. Go watch something where you're laughing. Because, again, that's reciprocal inhibition. But they've seen that people actually improve their mental health through comedies. Be involved with as many different activities, whether you ride horses or you have a dog and you walk your dog, you belong to a cooking club, all the various integrated things. And there's dozens of them. And you need to be doing that now. You know, I work with police officers, and, you know, the worst thing that happens, it's hard for a police officer. You almost have to have a split personality. When you're doing the job, I remember one police officer I was working with, he was having all kind of marital problems, a lot of marital problems with police officers and firemen, but mostly police officers more so. And he would come home, and he would be writing his wife and kids tickets. I mean, it's like, wait a minute, you leave that at the door, you know. And so in therapy, you know, I was working with them how to be more humane, how to be a father, how to be a husband, all the different kinds of things you can do. Leave your work where, you know, when you leave the building, leave your work there. And he got to be really good at being a father and caring and compassionate. And then he comes in one time and he says, well, I picked up this hooker and I felt sorry for her. And I said, wait a minute, that's not your wife. You can't do that. You can't slip into the role that you are as a father and a husband with people that you're working with that can get you killed. So it's really hard.
You know, Doc, I'm not a professional by any means, just through my experience, but it's funny. I hear you talk, and it's a lot of the same stuff that I've told some of the young people. One of the things I tell them all the time is when you get off work and you hang your uniform up, you leave your work in the locker.
Right.
You don't take it home with you. Find something happy. Find something else to get rid of it. And I heard you say something else, and it is kind of like a split personality when you really think about it. And again, I'm not a professional by any means, but we talk to other police officers. We talk to other people in our world, right? Our work world. And you vent a different way as you do with at home. It's a two system way of dealing with it, if that makes any kind of sense to you. But I kind of heard you talk about that, and it's amazing how it happens naturally as you become wiser and you don't let it take you over. You know, if you could somehow fight through it, and it's something that you could actually come up with that you do naturally. You know, if you have an open mind and you analyze yourself. Another thing that you said, I was thinking back to your traumatic brain injuries. I know that they are now doing studies from the bomb squad environment. We're cumulative bomb detonations, whether they're, you know, whether we wanted them to happen or not. They're doing big cumulative studies on the impact to the brain from even the smallest of detonations, but just happening over and over and over again.
And well, that's called. I just so happen to be an expert on this. I'm a national expert on vibroacoustic disease. Okay. You know, vibroacoustic syndrome. It was discovered in Portugal by Dr. Branco, and the airplane repair factories, because Portugal is kind of like Mexico. They send everything there to get it fixed because it's cheaper. Well, a lot of guys in these factories were experiencing all kind of problems, like physical, mental, anger, hostility, because they were in a constant high-intensity, low-frequency vibratory environment. And that can cause all kind of problems. People don't realize it. Like I said, it can cause pericardium thickening. It can cause vascular lesions, GI problems, anger, hostility. I had one case I did an expert witness work on. The guy had 21 breakdowns, body breakdowns. He worked 8 hours a day in front of this machine that put that kind of vibration out. World War I, you know what they call it? They got it right in World War I. They called it shell shock. They got it right. They knew there was something wrong with them.
Right.
That was vibroacoustic disease because World War I was an artillery war, and all day long they're rattling and they're in their trenches, and
Right.
that causes anytime you feel sound. I wrote an article for the Navy Medical Journal in 2002 called "The Sound You Feel Can Be Hazardous to Your Health." It can cause brain damage in unborn children. If a woman who's pregnant goes to a rock concert and they're vibrating with the sound. I mean, anytime you feel sound, every cell in your body is being damaged. If you only experience it occasionally, those cells repair themselves. Brain cells repair themselves slower, but they repair themselves. But if the gestation for a child, the brain is developing. I had a psychologist, a woman, who said, she read my article in the Navy Medical Journal, and she said, "You answered a question that I've been struggling with for 25 years, why my son was born with Down syndrome. I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I took care of myself. There was only one time that I got sick and nauseous and threw up, and it was at a rock concert when the sound was so loud, it made me sick, and I traced it back. That's when the brain was being developed."
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
Yes, those guys who are getting in the bomb squad, they need to know about vibroacoustic disease and be aware of some of the problems that can result from that constant, you fired a 50 caliber machine gun. You know how that vibrates? I mean, that shakes your whole body.
Yeah.
So the battlefield environment is a vibratory environment where you're being hit with all kind of high intensity, low frequency vibration. During World War II, the Nazis developed that as a weapon, and they were able to kill people with it, but they couldn't control it, and it was too big. The Russians have that weapon. They took those scientists. I worked with DARPA on a countermeasure of that weapon. I think that's what's going down in Cuba.
Oh, with the embassy,
Yeah.
thing?
I think the Cubans got that weapon from Russia, and this isn't pie in the sky. I'm not a flake, but I know about high intensity, low frequency vibration. It sounds like that's what's going on with those people in the embassy.
Yeah, right.
Wow. Well, I have another question too. In your opinion, Dr. Bart, how do you think we can combat misdiagnosis with the VA and also other doctors and healthcare professionals so that we can help diagnose and administer the right treatments for any patient, pretty much?
Well, what you got to do is you got to stand up for yourself and be responsible for your own health. You got to stand up. You got to say to the people at the VA, look, I want to detox off of these meds if you're on meds, and I want to get involved with an integrative treatment program. If you don't have one, I will go find one in the community, and you have a right to do that. Okay. You have a right. If they don't have it, you have a right to find it. Now, the VA is starting to come around a little bit. They're doing some yoga classes. They're doing some other things.
Good.
But you say, I want a total 100% integrative treatment program without any brain-altering medications. If you don't know how to do that, I will find somebody that does. And believe me, there are people out there. But again, you go in, you get my book, Invisible Scars. You sit down with your doctor and say, this is what I want. And if you haven't read this book, Doc, read it so you know what I want. Because you know something? I know more about this problem after reading this book than you do.
Very good. I love that. And I would like to also go back into the normal civilian world now, and just for a moment for everybody who's listening out there, because we know that there's, everybody out there that's being misdiagnosed with anxiety, depression, all these different things, mood disorders, anxiety, whatever it may be. How do we help them to, get a second opinion, or not just, jump for that prescription and go, okay, I have bipolar. Okay, great. This is going to fix it. And not even looking at the side effects of what it's going to do to alter and change your state. And then the other problem is also people going off of medications cold turkey without being assisted by a physician, which I've seen a lot of, and I've actually lost 3 friends due to it, coming off of drugs, 3 different prescriptions, 3 different people, from being diagnosed as bipolar, which they were not, and they actually killed themselves because of it. And, I would like to be able to speak up and stop this because we're losing good people, and it's got to stop.
Well, like I said before, if anybody is on psychiatric medications, and I don't feel any of them work, I really don't. I think they're more destructive than anything. But if you want to know why, psychiatry in the pharmaceutical industry generates $1/3 trillion a year peddling these psychiatric meds.
Yep.
And in the medical schools, they don't know how to do therapy. They don't train them to do therapy anymore. It's just drug.
All right.
And that's where you make your money. Now, one of the best things any community needs to know about mental health, there's a book. It's called the DSM, and it has all of the psychiatric labels: bipolar, ADD, ADHD, et cetera, et cetera. What people have to know, there is not one psychiatric label that has any science that distinguishes it from people who are normal. There is no brain scans. There is no blood work. There is no urine analysis. There is nothing that validates any of those diagnoses. There's no science in any of them. The only way those labels get put in this book that psychiatry uses and the insurance company uses, every so many years, a group of psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health people get together in a room and they decide what they're going to call people. And the pharmaceutical companies are sitting there saying, come up with more labels and we'll come up with more drugs. And that's the truth. And if people need to know that. There's no science. Now, I get a kick when they say, if you're depressed, come and see us and we'll do blood work and we'll show. Well, you know something? If somebody's sitting around all day long watching TV, eating bad food and everything else, their blood chemistry is going to be that of somebody who looks like they're depressed.
Yes.
You take that same person, you put them in a ballet class, you have them run every morning. Within 2 or 3 months, oh, guess what? Their blood chemistry is an athlete. So it's not that they had the blood chemistry of a depressed person first. They chose behaviors that led to their blood chemistry being the way it is.
Yeah.
But I get the biggest kick out of ADD, ADHD. They're again fake diagnoses, and they say, oh, we have proof that ADD really does exist because we did brain scans and their brains are smaller than the general population. Well, yeah, that's what happens when you give people amphetamines and Ritalin. They've been on Ritalin, that shrinks their brain. Don't give me this nonsense.
Yeah.
Wow. Dr. Bart Billings, it's just such an absolute honor to have you on the show today. And please, we've got about 30 seconds left. I'd like to also thank Joe, Navy SEAL, ex-Navy SEAL. Thank you for coming on today, being candid about your story. I hope that helps, with some of the things that are going on for you. And I definitely, a Christmas gift to you is I'm actually going to pick up the book, Invisible Scars, for you and have it delivered. So Merry Christmas early.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And also my friend and amazing officer, Bomb Squad Commander, Dino Zagrafis. Did I say that good enough?
You're good.
Hey, I'm working on it.
That's good.
I adore you. And I'm also giving you a copy of Invisible Scars as well. So that'll be on your doorstep for Christmas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming on. Where do we find your book, Dr. Bart Billings? And where do we find all of you amazing men on social media, excluding Joe?
Well, the book can be found at www.bartp.com. Just Google that. That's the book website. There's a lot of great information on the book website. And then click on Buy Book. It takes you right to Amazon. You'll have the book in a day or two. And to both gentlemen, to Dino and Joe, when you get that book, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to call me or get in touch with me. And if you want to get in touch with the Marines, what they're doing, I'll be happy to make that happen for you as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all your efforts and putting this all together and all your research. It really is going to make an impact on people, and that's really important.
Yes. Thank you for saving lives and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and also serving the country as well. Dr. Billings, and also thank you so much to Joe. Thank you to Dino. I'd like to thank my sponsors. We're going to be enjoying and devouring Quest Nutrition Bars, birthday cake, and Buzz Pop cocktails. We're going to be enjoying those in the back as well. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on the TLC Unleashed show, Hollywood Vibes, Sports and Life. We're here every Wednesday, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can find me on social media, Facebook, Traci Lynn Cowan, Traci Lynn Cowan, Health and Wellness Expert, also Hollywood Vibes, Sports and Life, TLC Unleashed, and www.tlcunleashed.com. And if you want to order your Buzz Pops to get those at your next party, www.buzzpopcocktails.com. Almost had me there. Until next time.